Welcome back. The State Department is picking up the ball in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. It has announced it will reopen an internal review of her handling of classified material when she was Secretary of State. This coming, of course, as FBI Director James Comey appeared in front of a congressional committee this past week and defended his decision not to criminally charge Clinton. Joining me right now is James Kallstrom. He is the former Assistant Director of the FBI. And Jim, it is always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What's your take, first off, on this breakdown of rule of law that we're seeing? I know this is bothersome to you as well.
Yeah, Maria, I'm so concerned about our country and our democracy. I mean, lying now is just rampant. No one seems to really care. A poll of Democrat voters said even if she was indicted, they would still vote for her, the majority of people. You know, whatever happened about duty? John Kennedy saying, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's dead and buried. You know, I just feel bad for people that are growing up in this country because it's so vastly different than it was when I was young.
I've got to go through the Jim Comey testimony with you for a moment. First of all, I was very taken aback that the interview that was done of Hillary Clinton with the FBI was not recorded and it was not under oath. You were there at the FBI for so long. Is this customary, not to record a conversation with a major subject, not to put them under oath?
I haven't been there for a while, but I was taken back by that. And I was also taken back by the fact that he acted like he hadn't even spoken to the agents that were there. I forget his exact words, but it was sort of lackadaisical as to what that even meant.
Yeah, he said he didn't do the interview, other agents did, and he has notes.
Yeah, I mean, why she wouldn't have been asked. I think it's important for the public to know what was she asked and what were her answers.
Right.
Did she take the Fifth Amendment 35 times? Did she refuse to answer? Did she not have recollection of the facts?
Yeah.
You know, that's all important stuff. This woman's running for President of the United States.
Right.
This is the same woman that I believe, from reports, was fired from the Watergate Commission for lying, and who went to the Andrews Air Force Base and lied to the parents with the caskets 20 feet away.
Well, this is a really important point because Jim Comey was asked, did he see the congressional testimony where she said to Congress, I never sent or received any classified information, and I gave the State Department all of my emails, which of course then we learned that there were 30,000 emails that were destroyed. So she, I think, lied to Congress, and he said, oh no, I didn't see that, I didn't look at that testimony.
Well, I would think that all of that would have been incorporated into this investigation. You know, her prior testimony, her prior statements, of course, those are critically important. You know, how can you do investigation and not even look at those things? And what about the Clinton Foundation? I mean, what's going on with that? He says, I can't talk about that. He needs to talk about that before the election. People need to know, is that under investigation? You know, on paper, that looks like a huge, huge criminal conspiracy to me.
We know that she was talking to the Russians when she was Secretary of State and approved a deal for uranium, U.S. uranium, a huge amount of U.S. uranium to go to the Russians, and then Russia gave money to the Clinton Foundation. I mean, this is all in Peter Schweizer's Clinton cash book.
And the 5 people on the board of that company that received it, you know, donated like $2,500,000 each to the foundation. So it just never ends. And as far as intent, when you set up a separate, I mean, here's a woman that's been around the government a long, long time. When you set up a server that's for the express purpose of not complying with the Freedom of Information Act, the Official Records Act, you know, what more intent do you need?
Right.
And you tell people to take off security notifications on top of documents. What further intent do you need?
I'm glad you brought up intent because I want to play for you what Rudy Giuliani said to me this past week. But it's interesting because when you just look at the situation, what was your intention of having a private server? It was to keep your communication private.
Well, and then that's your intent. And then the president says this is the most sophisticated, the best lady that could ever be recommended for this office. Yeah. And then she wants to, when someone says, did they scrub it? She says, what do you mean, with a cloth? You know, this whole playing dumb like she doesn't understand any of this stuff.
No, it's so disingenuous. Here's Mayor Giuliani. He also raised the issue of intent. Listen to this. This was last week on Fox Business.
The director of the FBI made a really wrong decision, completely incorrect, and gave people a completely wrong impression of how you prove intent. and then ignored the two statutes that don't require intent, and gave no explanation of why there would be no indictment of those statutes. In fact, he laid out all the facts that would require an indictment. He said she was extremely careless. Well, the statute requires gross negligence. Gross negligence and extremely careless are the same thing.
Bottom line, do you think there is room here for a possible perjury probe that should be started for Hillary Clinton? And what about the foundation? Do you think we will find out anything and get any details of this investigation before the election?
I think without question that should be looked at. You know, and that should be done expeditiously. We need to know that. You know, we're here comments, you know, what difference does that make if all that comment was in line with, you know, what the actual truth is? And absolutely, the Clinton Foundation needs to be looked at. What kind of a foundation is this? It gives, what, 20% of its monies to charity? How does it even meet the requirements of a 501c3? And is the IRS looking at that? I doubt it.
Did politics get in the way of the FBI's work, do you think, as a longtime FBI man?
I just don't understand why Jim Comey felt he had to make that decision and take the Justice Department off the hook. He should have presented the facts, sent the facts over to the Attorney General, and let her make the decision and then live politically with that decision.
Jim Kallstrom, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. James Kallstrom joining us.